So this video is about hope. This video is about trust. And this video is indeed the Gospel of Marie. I've never done one of these before. I've done a Gospel of Marie where I share with you my experiences and the knowledge that I've taken on board, applied and done turned into wisdom and gone, oh wow, try this. This is amazing. But I've never really shared my Gospel of Marie, which is essentially what I call the vehicle of our lives, because I'm going to share with you my story and the reason I give it, call it hope and trust is because I know that there's so many of you out there, okay, including myself, right, that, we have so much magic and so much creativity and inspiration within us. And we really want to share it, but we go through these layers of well, I'm an imposter, imposter syndrome. Who am I to share such things? And who is even going to watch me or listen to me? Am I even relevant or valid? Blah, blah, blah. And we are, our stories are indeed just a story. Okay. So I don't usually get too involved in that, but it doesn't really matter. We're humans and we always relate through trauma, which I don't think will ever change, but it helps us to relate to one another, to have a resonance, right? So I don't really talk about my story because there's so much more than that. However, I think when I do share my story, it breaks down the gap between you and I, that all of a sudden, the perfection of being a spiritual teacher. Meanwhile, when this video isn't recording, I'm shouting at my kids, F-bombing. Do you know what I mean? Looking at the mirror thinking, I'm so fat today. Do you know what I mean? Or just going, having a bad day spiritually, can't channel, having huge doubt days. And I think that is the truth of it all, which I think really spurs one into action where they think, well, if she can do it, I can do it. Yes, you can. And it's not about all of us having podcasts or well, maybe it is actually, because we've all got a voice. It's not always about that. It's about expressing yourself. It's about, really working with your awen. Awen is your inspirational force within you. It's very sort of like Celtic, that is. We can liken that to Heka. Heka is magic and medicine. With the manifestation energy. It doesn't matter which board you bounce across. It's all the same. We all are creator beings. We all have so much energy and things to share from within. And it's high time we did it. But like I say, it may be that you're a painter and you didn't know you're a painter. It may be that you just want to write books. Maybe I've got so many friends that wrote children's books after their kids got a little bit older. It may be that you just like doing painting and decorating. There is an expressive part of each and every one of us that needs to be expressed. But sometimes, especially us creators, when it comes to directly the spiritual things, or you want to do a YouTube channel or anything, actually, you do worry about judgment and all the rest of it. And that comes from sometimes looking outside of your lane. You start looking left to right going, well, look at them. They're perfect and amazing because you've seen them on Instagram and they're looking like they've got the life, and you're like, well, I could never be a spiritual teacher like that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like we go into comparison, which is our human side. But then comparison is what cuts it off at the legs and stops you from doing that video, stops you from putting that podcast out. And I've been through this all so many different ways. And I still go through it now. Share because you want to share. Don't give a shit about who's receiving it, actually, because you just want to share. Well, I do care about who receives it. Of course I do. But you know what I'm saying? Just share for sharing's sake. Just share to get that run of creativity out of your body. Feel how much better you will feel when you are being creative with your frequency, right? And that's why I wanted to share my gospel, because I think that not to have so many people in the comments go, oh, Marie, you're amazing. You've been through so much. Let's keep it real. We've all been through so much, right? It's relative. So I'm not sharing my story because of that. But I think that once you know the story behind the person, all of a sudden, like I say, it becomes relatable. And you think, well, she also has the same worries, concerns, self-doubt every day. And she's running Egypt tours. Of course I do. Of course I do. Because I just think that we need to accept that. And if we accept that and we can be with that, then all of a sudden, maybe you will get off your seat and go and do something similar to that as well. Now you know, because there's this pursuit of perfection. I'm going to just do my inner work until I'm ready to do that. No, just do it anyway. period. And we're in a time now where it's really important that each and every one of us comes forth with our wisdom, our contribution. And it's not to be, it has to be directly spiritual. No, not at all. You have to be a free thinker. That's your contribution to the universe. That's how we're tipping the scales. By you just saying, do you know what? I'm not going to listen to the fear stories of my head. I'm actually going to go and live through my heart and create and do what I need to do. And that is the frequency that you put out in the world. And if you do it, I do it, the next person is inspired to do it. Maybe they listen to your story and they say, oh, well, I can do it because, he was really scared about doing that, but he did it. Do you know what I mean? And he was scared and he did it anyway. Do you know what I mean? So my gospel, okay, is as a starseed, being born into a very loving family. I was one of the lucky ones. My parents are still together on this day, which makes this story even more kind of bonkers, because I was like, even at the age of 8 years old, I remember feeling so lonely. I remember, like, my family are from Wolverhampton and Birmingham, from the UK, and places like that. So big city places have big city families. So I had a multitude of cousins and uncles and everything like that. The best upbringing. My mum and dad would take us out to the mountains, and we'd always have an outdoors life. So I didn't have a shit upbringing. I had a good upbringing, but I just felt so lonely. And I remember that at the age of 8. Remember having many situations where I was just like, isn't that weird that you remember that from age 8? But I always felt like on the outside looking in, yet my reality, that didn't match, right? Because I shouldn't be feeling like that. Anyway, when I got to about 12 years old, started to become a little bit of a wild child. Okay, this story might sound familiar to a lot of you. And by the time I was about 13, 14, I'd started smoking cigarettes. In fact, 12 years old, started smoking cigarettes, and started smoking pot when I was 14, started doing amphetamine. Sorry, Mom, if you didn't know this, but this is the ages. Even though we're very open and close, you might learn a few new things, Mom, Dad, soz, because I know they watch this channel. But I started to hit it early, right? And then by the time I was about 14 and 15, I was like doing amphetamine. I was on self-destruct. I had like a mission. I'm going out to the party scene. All of my friends at school were deciding what careers they wanted. I was like, I'm going out to the illegal rave scene. That is it, and that is all. That's my agenda. I'm going to party like a rock star. And that's I was on self-destruct. So that kicks in with the starseed mission that we all have. Starseeds came. Most of us have had addiction, because it's also like, it's like a starseed trait. The mission was to come here and break into a million pieces and do it properly. And let me tell you, starseeds do things meticulously, attention to detail. They do it properly, right? So that's what I did. I broke myself into a million pieces. So I went on the party scene, out there with the ravers. I mean, listen, the 90s movement of being a raver. I know a lot of you were out there at that time, but in the UK specifically, you know what I mean? That was a wild time to be alive. That was a movement. That was like flower power. There was a revolution that came, and it was all one love. And, and there's a huge movement of just wanting to dance and party and be tribal and be with our people. Listen, it was fueled by a lot of ecstasy and molly and stuff like that, and cocaine. But it don't matter. It still brought hearts together. And that party scene was amazing. To a point. There was a lot of us that stayed at the party scene. They were the last ones there. When everybody had gone home, that was me. So I couldn't just go out on one night. I'd be like a whole 4-day bender. And I think a lot of us had that. And then all of a sudden, just like the movies, the party scene was amazing and wonderful and just like awesome. And then suddenly dark. So this is where the real work started to happen. So basically, by the time I was like 16 years old, I was already into those parties and those raves and into those drugs. And then when I got to 17, I had my first nervous breakdown, okay? And lots of anxiety and everything like that, and all just drug fueled, and not knowing that I didn't feel like I fit into the world. I think with the drugs and everything like that, the reason like we kind of go those routes is because we think we find our family. Let's face it, we're all high all the time. So when you're high, it's like, just all like loved up. But that gave you a sense and feeling of belonging. And I think that you found your tribe, especially when you were like, a pot smoker. You were like, yeah, do you smoke, man? Yeah, cool. There was like a common ground. And I think we were all just looking to belong. And then, of course, you look to belong. And then before you know it, the drugs have got hold of you and you're not belonging anyway, just in a dirty flat, in a dirty way. And so it's kind of like you went off track. and then you seriously lost yourself. And I mean, like, I had a second nervous breakdown when I was 21, all because of the same thing: violent boyfriends, drug dealer boyfriends, just abuse. Doesn't really add up because I didn't have that in my home life, but I was obviously just a very lost starseed. So by the time I got to about 30 years old in my life, I had actually had 3 nervous breakdowns. But just rewinding to that time of getting to like early 20s, that was when I was really rock bottom, like really rock bottom. And then I got an opportunity. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about hope. I'm talking about your path is your path and your purpose is your purpose. So I just want to pause here, do a little bit of teaching in between. So that was the mission. The mission is, so I'm up in the heavens, right? There's your rap sheet, Marie. You got to go and do this, and this. Can you complete that? Yes, I can. So off I go down to earth. Okay, young star seed, break into a million pieces. Need to lose myself completely because somehow I need to put myself back together so I can gain the knowledge and then the wisdom, because I put myself back together. I'm gonna have to stop. I'm gonna have to heal at an early age, and I'm gonna have to learn that and know how I did that. Okay. So are you willing and able? Yep, let's do this. So that's what happened, right? So we come to our first mission, where the first half of your life will always be breaking into a million pieces, will always be the shadow of your purpose. The second part of your life will be the light, like the good stuff. Thank God I'm nearing 50. It's got to happen about now. No, but seriously, that's how it rolls. Okay. So this is just to give you a bit of a map and compass on it. So that's what happens. We come into it and we really, really go into the depths of ourselves, and we learn our lessons first half of our life. And then the second half of the life, we make sense of it and it becomes a bit lighter. That's the mission. So that's what I did. So the early 20s, I mean, eventually I ended up living back home with mom and dad. Now this is where the story turns, like so suddenly. This is where the hope and trust comes in, because I often look back on my life and think, how the hell did that happen? So there I am, going around the toilet, still doing drugs, still in a mess, still lost, still shitty friends, shitty life. And friends of mine, I've changed a job, got friends with some new people. Do you want to come to Zimbabwe? Because we go every year. And they said, we can bring friends out. Would you like to come? Well, that's a fat yes. My mom and dad were like, go, try and change your life. Try and get a different rhythm. So, of course, I went to Zimbabwe in the middle of the farm invasions. If anybody remembers, the early 2000s, it was the farm invasions. A lot of political unrest and a lot of murders going on. It was intense. So anyway, Marie's still going to go, though. So anyway, we get on a plane, we go to Zimbabwe. The son of who the people we are staying with gets sent to the airport to pick us up, which he did. So he picked us up. And then 5 days later, that son asked me to marry him. And I said, absolutely. It was a no-brainer. Bonkers. I know, bonkers. He's the man I'm still married to today, Liv Brendan. My husband, my twin flame, my man. He's the one that I'm still with and I'm still happy to be with. But this is where the twin flame thing came in now. He was so stoic. He still is now. He is so grounded. He is so consistent. Loves me unconditionally. Marie here. This is where my soul path changed. Twin flame, constantly on the run. Ran away from everything in my life. Absolutely everything. He just held my helium balloon, was just like, it's okay, she'll come back. And that was the soul contract that Brendan and I had. So when I ended up in Zimbabwe, we literally got married 6 weeks later. Now, in between that 6 weeks, I got really scared because I was like, oh my God, what are you thinking? It all started to petal. And I thought, oh my God, I'm about to marry a man I don't know. I've said yes. I'm living in his house in Zimbabwe. A minute ago, I was in the raves in the UK. What the F is going on here? Even I had a freak out moment. And then just as I got my Nikes on to run and just go, no, we're not doing this, I found out I was pregnant. And the game changed again. And it was like, Spirit was like, you're not going anywhere. Now, my relationship with things like this was just like, run, okay? And I wanted to run. And I couldn't this time. And I had to, at the grand old age of 23, face my shit. And I had a decision to make. And this beautiful man in front of me was like, listen, you are free to go and do whatever you want. You are carrying my child. I understand if you can't take on all of this, but just know whatever decision you make, I may not be standing here after you made that decision if it's not with me, because I don't know how I'm going to feel about all of this. And I was like, wow, truth talk. I remember sitting there and thinking, shit, shit. And in that moment, I was like, well, this is just too much. I said, I'll stay. Now, so there I gave my sacred yes. But then I was surrounded by war veterans who all wanted to kill me because it was basically the war vets. Zimbabwe were fighting with the UK at that time. So they were killing farmers all around. So here I was, pregnant, barefoot and pregnant in a kitchen in Africa, with a man, married to a man I didn't know, because I indeed got married. I found out I was pregnant in February, got married in February, and it was just like, it all happened so fast. So 6 weeks after meeting this man, I'm now pregnant, I'm married, and I'm like in a country which is at war. Now, I don't know whether that can be considered from the frying pan into the fire. I don't know, but my soul path has been a mission and a half. So that's what happened. So anyway, the war vets indeed took our farm, kicked us off in the middle of the day and said, you have to leave now with the clothes on your back, newborn baby on my arms. Nearly lost my husband and my father-in-law because they came and they wanted to just kill everybody. We got off the farm with our lives. Many didn't. And then I ended up just basically being in Zimbabwe and just finding my feet. Now, the addiction, of course, I had to work with the addiction whilst being pregnant. And I did that. I should have gone to rehab. I didn't. Okay. So now I come into Harare, okay, which is where we were living. And I've got a newborn baby. And for the first 2-3 years, I was a mom. But then suddenly, out of boredom, I decided to find a hobby. And that was exercise. So I became an exercise specialist. I ended up training as one all the way. It took me 19 years as an exercise specialist. But here's the thing. Naively thinking that I was free from addiction, I then started to exercise. And it wasn't too long that I actually cleared the drug addiction, but then I started to get addicted to exercise. So exercise now was my new addiction. And then I decided to open a healthy eating, franchise, nutritional business on top of it, which I was very successful at. Started to get bulimia, started to develop eating disorders. So then I started in my very naive years thinking, addiction seems to be something that's a frequency, not necessarily about the substance. And I went through it. I got addicted to shopping. I got addicted to exercise. I got addicted to food. I mean, it was ridiculous. So here I was, free of my life, no problem, not doing drugs anymore. I'm healed. Got hold of me so hard. So it was many years that I was in addiction for, beyond just pills and powder. It took me all the way through. So basically, during this time, I discovered myself as a healer, and that is where everything started to change. First of all, I worked on myself. Then I started to see the benefits of the fact that I was a clinical sufferer of depression, couldn't even go out the door without having a panic attack and having to lie down for 3 days. Started to work with myself with crystal healing, Reiki, meditation. Overnight, I transformed. And then I thought, well, here I am also an exercise teacher. I felt like I got the golden formula, which I did. But within it, it was laden and laced with addiction. So yes, I had my new world, my new life, my new husband, my new child, and all the rest of it. But it still had addiction that was weaving itself all the way through it, right? So eventually, over time, I was able to understand addiction, which was my biggest teacher in being a very, very good healer, of which I am and I was back there. And the only reason I was able to become that good of a teacher, healer, and all the rest of it is because I'd walked my talk. Because I'd actually been through the depths of addiction. I'd broken into a million pieces. I knew fear. I had so much fear in my body, all my hair fell out. It was ridiculous. My weight fluctuated. I lost weight. I was skinny as hell. I was like, I'd gone to every corners of myself, right? And during this time, I evolved as a spiritual space holder, right? So this is where it brought me to today. So I want to just cap that off a little bit, because then after 15 years, that's 15 years I lived in Zimbabwe. And then I got to the point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't live in Zimbabwe anymore. There's something else for me. And we actually moved to Cape Town, because Cape Town's kind of like an international portal to the rest of the world. There's a huge portal here. It's very different to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's a very, very small community. It's lovely. The people are divine there, but it is all encompassing, restrictive. You know what I mean? It's very African-y. So you move to Cape Town now, it's a completely different world. So I moved here thinking that the whole world was going to welcome me as the best exercise trainer in the world, the best healer in the world, and I was going to expand on my business. Oh no, honey, here's another change in the waters. What happened is nobody opened their studios to me. I didn't work anywhere, tried to open a studio. I was an aerial yoga teacher, tried to do that, didn't work for me. Well, hang on a minute. I've been doing this exercise for 19 years. How is this not happening for me? Oh, here we go again. The deepest dark night of the soul, Marie. In you go. As if the drug life wasn't enough. So anyway, that's what happened. I went into the deepest dark depths of self. And here I am in Cape Town, trying to find myself. And that is what Cape Town brings to you. Cape Town is a very, very powerful energy which will teach you your purpose. People come here for short times or they come here for a long time like me. And everybody will say the same thing. When I came to Cape Town, I was lost. When I came to Cape Town, it was a calling, something to do with Table Mountain, 100%. But when it unlocked in me, it kind of unlocked something about my purpose. I learned something about myself. And that's what Cape Town gave to me. My work isn't here. It's out there with you guys in the States, the Netherlands, Germany, wherever. But it's, funny enough, not in Africa. I am rooted here, but my work is out there. So there's something that Africa feeds to me for my soul. So that's kind of like the dynamic. Isn't that interesting? So now, here I am, lost once again. Decided after 19 years, don't want to do this identity of an exercise trainer. Don't want to be a healer because I didn't really feel like I was a healer. And then Egypt came along. By accident, actually. I was trying to get to Peru. I ended up in Egypt, right? And that is where we know my story because I've spoken about it a lot. I went to Egypt, I went on somebody else's group, and then I went on somebody else's group again, and then I came on my own pilgrimage, and then slowly but surely I kind of like discovered this wisdom and this superpower and this what's the word? This gift, I suppose, of being able to hold space. And that was the journey of going through the layers of arriving to a place where I'm so comfortable with now because I know how to hold my own space and I know how to hold the space of others and I know how to do it in Egypt. I know how to do it in Avalon and I could go and do it on the Alps, anywhere in the world, on the Alps, in Peru, I could do anywhere. Do you know what I mean? But it's like my sweet spot. I discovered now that I was able to hold space in these faraway lands and access portals. Who would have thought? Can we just hold that there and go back to the beginning of Marie, the drug addict? Do you know what I mean? Lost in the ethers, 3 nervous breakdowns. Do you know what I mean? So the whole point of me sharing my story with you, because this is a very sort of like, look, it's only 20 minutes, but it's just like, it's a long story, I suppose. There's so much more that happened here, but I'm trying to give you the essence of the rainbow of the cycles, of the endings, the death, the rebirths, and the resurrections, right? Now, when you go through a very, very scary time in your life, probably the worst, where you think the whole life is closing in on you, that is the moment of transformation. That is the moment of initiation transformation. That is the moment of initiation rebirth. You know what I mean? And it's like, when we get so close to our balloon pop moment, that is when you are going to want to give up the most. That is when it looks the most cloudiest it's ever looked. That is when you're the most unsure you've ever been. In that moment of extreme doubt, all of a sudden it exacerbates, it gets really big, and then it pops. And then you're like, oh my God. So this is kind of where we are. So if we can like look at my life, and maybe it's reflective of your own, we go through these cycles of death, the resistance, let go. You go into the rebirth, you like rest in the womb. Okay. And then resurrection, right? I have a clear line of sight. This is what I want to do. So let's relate that to my story. That was coming into kind of like the drug addiction, having to make a decision. And do I stay in Zimbabwe or not? Baby in my belly. Do I get married? That was the point of like critical, massive intensity. She said, yes. Do you know what I mean? And then the critical point of intensity when I had to leave Zimbabwe, and my husband didn't want to come to Cape Town, but I had to go because I knew that this was part of my purpose. I didn't know, but it opened up everything else to me, right? Even down to the points of nervous breakdowns. Think about that. That's when your body is so overloaded, it can't take anymore. So which means it's the most critical mass, intense point of surrender. Do you know what I mean? We don't really want to have nervous breakdowns, but there's a lot easier way of going about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's not have to go through nervous breakdowns for us to get the message. But when we are not aware and we're learning how to drive our Lamborghini, okay, that's kind of like we might wrap it around a tree a couple of times. Do you know what I mean? But there's always a panel beater and somebody to fix it up and we can carry on going. But it's like, you know, like as we go through our lives, we see how much resistance we had on board and what we had to go through to have that balloon pop moment to honor the death, rebirth and resurrection, right? As we get older, it ain't that bad, is it? It ain't that bad. We get the message. We like, this old chestnut, I've been here before. Yes, it's a bit intense, but I don't need to go through a nervous breakdown, have all my hair fall out and have panic attacks all the time. Do you know what I mean? So there is a progression. There is a progression. So we all have a story. There are stories out there that are worse than mine, right? But it's not a pissing contest and it's not why we share our stories. We do it so we can relate to one another, and maybe, just maybe, you can take your shadow and your pain, which you healed, because you healed it through joy. You took your sorrow and you healed it through joy. How did you do that? How did you fill your cauldron? How did you transmute yourself through fire? You might not know the ancient wisdom teachings of that, but that's essentially what you did. So we all have a rags to riches story. We all have, because of that, a beautiful map and compass on how we did it, which is why journaling is so flipping important. I'm going to do another video on this because I want to talk a lot about our gospels that we're going to write. Journaling is essential because you're going to miss an awful lot of that wisdom, and you're going to miss a lot of the jewels and the juice that you actually, how you got from A to B. And it's only when you start writing that you think you know what you're going to write, and then your pen unlocks more. That is channeled writing. That is when you journal, you will move into channeled writing, and that's when you unlock your wisdoms. And when you go back and read it, you go, holy shit, did I write that? And that's going to be very much one of the next videos I'm going to do, talking about that ancient wisdom and how you unlock it. And how important it is that we bring that through and you can share it with others, because others are going to come to you. They're going to say, how did you do that? I mean, essentially, the end game is that you're going to emanate in your own frequency, and people are just going to bask in your light, and they're going to unlock it just through that. But there's always going to be a conversation, isn't there? I don't like to talk about the stories too much because then we get fixated on the stories. We want to talk about the energy of the story and how we alchemize, because it's alchemy. How did we transform that base metal into gold? You know what I mean? That's what we want to look at. So we want to look between the lines of the story, if you know what I mean. That's where your magic is. That's where your gospel is. That's where your truth and your wisdom, your unique wisdom is. And I've never done a video like this, sharing this on like this. I've never done a video like this because I've always just got on with it. But now, maybe, just maybe, it sparks something in you to feel the validity and the importance of your presence here. And maybe just stop for a moment and go, shit, I did that. Yeah, I did that. Give yourself a little bit of love and accolades of like, yeah, I did that. So this is the Gospel of Marie. I don't know what this is going to spark in anybody. Maybe somebody stopped watching 3 minutes in. I don't know, because I sometimes get bored of my own story. I only usually refer to it as teaching. And when people say to me, so how did you get here? And I start talking about the Gospel of Marie, they're like, oh my God, you need to write a book about that. And I was like, well, actually, it's coming. But this is important because I believe that we all have something to share. And it is my mission in this life to bring every soul that would like to be in my space, every soul, every being, I'd like to bring them to the space and know that they are as important as the next person with what they have come here to share. Your contribution is essential. It's essential. We can all channel. We can all write. We can all do these things. We all have these gifts and abilities. No longer must we glorify teachers and sit there. I mean, that's exactly what the Lady of the Lake, who came through to me, who's actually from Avalon, obviously, because she's the Lady of the Lake. She basically said there needs to be a desensitizing of what they call the Jesus complex. When one is speaking to the masses, all of a sudden we glorify that person. When somebody's watching somebody on YouTube, oh wow, like they're like on YouTube. It ain't a thing. It ain't a thing. You know what I mean? It's just like we're all people. We all have the same. So we have to kind of close the gap on that, because what happens is like we We step into our power to a point, but then I want to watch Joe Dispenza. We step into our power to a point, but like, oh, I'm never going to be like Deepak Chopra. Do you know what I mean? And I believe those teachers are kind of like, you know, they have their place, absolutely. But then it's about us stepping up. And how do we do that when we've got a massive block of energy of like, I am not worthy, because we're going to go and pay a load of money to go and see that guy stand on the stage and we're actually in our thousands watching this person? How do we bring our own sovereignty forward? Because it's not going to happen as long as we're doing that. So that's why the gospel of you is so flipping important. I mean, I think this is actually the longest video I've ever done. So let's hope that it's landed somewhere and has sparked some kind of inspiration, sparked your awan. Let's see how that works. And yeah, it's time to bring yourself to the party. And I keep getting the message, it's time to fill your space. Take up space. Take up space. Or as they say, take up real estate. Let's do that. Because you're important. You are important as the next person. I know I am. I tell myself that every day. Hey, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. You know what I mean? But it's important. So give me a thumbs up if you agree with what I'm saying here. So let's get our gospels out, people. Peace.